Hello, this is Travis Butterfield, and I am creating another tutorial for our web editors in the College of Public Service. Today's topic is the first of a short series of videos about working with images. Images in websites are complicated because most of our web editors don't know HTML or CSS, and so they don't really know how to add images in a way that is reliable and that looks good, and it can be very frustrating for a lot of our web editors. So I'm hoping that these videos will explain some of the techniques that you might need and help you avoid some of the common mistakes that people make. This first video will focus on just using the tools that are available, and then the future videos will focus on how you can, with not much knowledge of HTML at all, augment your images and web pages so that they look a lot better, especially for mobile devices. So this first video, I'm just going to show you the basics of how to add images to a web page. And so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go into this fake page I've created and click Edit. And there are a couple of different places that we can use to add an image to this page. There's the Featured Image section, which is a special field just for a featured image on this page. Please don't confuse that with this Add a File thing, which sometimes we can add images in the Add a File section depending on what is allowed, and I can change the allowed file types for you if you need a different file type. Right now this one hasn't really been configured because it only has TXT files, but usually it will be stuff like PDFs, Word documents, Excel documents, PowerPoint documents, that kind of stuff, not so much images. That's what this field is often for. And so this is fairly straightforward. You click the Browse button, you find the image on your computer, click Open, and it uploads it here. You get a preview. You can move the crosshairs to select the focus area of the image. Basically, there are tools in websites that dynamically crop images based on the need of the page, and that's coded for you by the developer. And so if you need a certain part of the image to not be cropped out, let's say the top left corner of this image is super important, and so when it gets cropped, we don't want that part cropped out, we could use this to do that. Usually you just put it in the middle, and best practice is to kind of, for images that may be cropped, to keep the important stuff in the middle. But this helps for those instances when it's not in the middle and you still want to use the particular image that you're using. So I added this. You'll notice that it doesn't add anywhere into the body area. I'm going to hit Save. And now you'll see that it has been placed below the body of this page. The developer for your site, which often is me, can choose where these go and how they'll display. I can do quite a bit with it. It just takes a little bit of work on the code side. So The idea is that this is placed somewhere, and then through code I can manipulate it to put it above or wrap text around it, but that's all stuff that I would have to do. So a lot of our editors don't find that useful, but in certain instances it's very useful, such as on these news articles. You'll notice that this is an aggregation of many news articles, and these little images are basically dynamically created by the website system called Drupal for me. I don't have to create this page, it does it for me automatically. And it's basically taking these images, which are featured images, and resizing them, cropping them, and placing them here in this grid of multiple items that go to multiple pages in the site. So this is all dynamically created through code to make everyone's lives easier. So that's one of the big purposes of the featured image. But if you're not using the featured image for something like that, it may not look the way you want. So let's go back into our editor and let's remove this. And instead, let's place an image in the body itself. In order to do this, the best way is to use the media browser here on the toolbar. So if I click that, there are several things, and you may be familiar with this. You can upload a file from your computer, or if you've already uploaded it, you can find it in the library. So let's say that we already uploaded a headshot that we want to use. We uploaded it somewhere else, but since it's been uploaded once, we don't want to upload it again and bloat the site with duplicates. So we've got this picture that we've chosen, and you'll notice there's a display as drop down, and it gives you some options. Original size is self-explanatory. Responsive means that the image will grow to fit the size of the container that it's in, and I'll explain that a little bit later. A quarter size means it's 1/4 of the size of the container that it's in. A thumbnail is a predefined small version of it. And then WYSIWYG and link you don't want to use. The link just turns it into a text link, and WYSIWYG doesn't do anything. So you want to make sure you put in some alt text. Let's pretend this person's name is Sarah Jane Smith. And then we can also put in a link. So let's say asu.edu. So if we hit submit, we've got this picture, and I put it in as original size, but let's think, oh, I didn't want it as original size. So I can click the media browser again after I've clicked the image, and these little toggle handles show up. And you can change the display as, let's say we want it to be a quarter size. So then if we hit submit, you'll notice that it has resized, and now it's a quarter size. So if we hit save, and then we view the page, you'll notice the text wraps around the image nicely. The quarter size has a built-in style that does text wrapping, where it places the image on the left and it wraps text around it, which can be very useful. Sometimes that can be a problem, though, when you want the image to be visible on mobile devices, and I'll show you this. So I'm going to hit F12 and bring up my inspector, and then I'm going to click on this little icon that looks like a phone. Different browsers use different ones, but it'll say something like responsive design or mobile design, or it'll look like a phone. And so now we can see what it will look like on a small screen, like a phone size screen, which is this one's 320 by 480. I can choose a different device. Let's say I want it to be an iPhone 6. So this is what it will look like on an iPhone 6. This picture is okay, but it's a fourth of the width of this containing area. And maybe what we want is for it to fill the whole area. And that's where something like a responsive image would come into play. But responsive images are tricky, and I think I will cover those in an upcoming video tutorial, because if you use them wrong, they will look really bad. So we'll kind of skip over that, but again, we'll go into edit, and we can see in the editor that the text is not wrapping around the image. Sometimes that happens where it looks a little different in the editor than on the final page, and that's because some of the style code is not applied the same in the editor as on the final page. So don't worry about that, but just be aware that that's going to happen, especially with when you have a quarter width image. So we can look, we can see what a thumbnail looks like. So that's just a really small image. I think it's 100 by 100, but I could be wrong on the dimensions. But that's how you add an image. Let's see what the thumbnail looks like. So the thumbnail does not wrap around have the text wrap around it, and so that's another problem that it comes up a lot when people are trying to do things with images. There's no spacing between the image and the text. It doesn't look good. So we'll cover that in a future tutorial. So I'm going to cut this tutorial short and pick this up in the next section, which will be focusing on putting in photos using some important web design tools that are available, but may take a little bit of learning to use. So until next time, good luck with your web editing.